Oh my God. Medical school, the moment you get accepted to medical school or you decide medicine, a lot of people don't understand when they make that decision what that entails. Like they don't understand, like they think, I'm going to medicine. You have no idea what that means.
What do you want to do after high school? This question stresses out every single teenager because the truth is, we can't make up our minds about what we're going to eat for breakfast, let alone a whole career.
But with applications around the corner, we need to do something about it. Join us every Thursday at 1, where we interview professionals in a variety of careers, so that one day we can answer this stressful question with confidence in our choices and ourselves. This is Career Hunt.
Well, if it isn't one of those 3 jobs that puts a smile on our parents' faces, you read the title. Today we'll be talking about doctors. Doctors are essentially qualified practitioners of medicine. They diagnose and treat patients with illnesses, injuries, and pain. Doctors can be general and work in primary care, or they can specialize in things like neurology, radiology, internal medicine, and the list goes on. The average salary for a doctor in Canada ranges from $150,000 to more than $300,000 depending on the field and experience. But with that comes a lot of commitment. Doctors have to go through 4 years of an undergrad, then another 4 years of medical school, then residency and training, so expect more than 9 years before you become a physician. Many TV shows and films like Grey's Anatomy and Good Doctor have tried to capture the doctor lifestyle, but today we'll find out if what the dramas tell us are actually true. Our guest is specialized in internal medicine and has experience working as a doctor in war and a pandemic. He studied medicine in the Middle East and currently works in Canada, so he'll be a great guide for our international viewers as well. That's all from me, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
So I graduated medical school from the University of Damascus in Syria in 2012. I was accepted in 2004. It's a bit different than it's done here in Canada. There's no undergrad. You just go from basically the 12th grade right into medical school. In order to get into medical school in Syria, you have to write a generalized exam. It's a nationwide exam. You have to get out of 240 marks. You have to get around 234 actually to get in. So I wrote it the first time. I got 225. And I didn't get it, so I wrote it again. I got 236, and that's how I ended up getting into medical school. It's an 8-year journey there. And then when I graduated, I started working in internal medicine and oncology, and that was kind of mid-war, and I got through maybe a year and a bit, and things had to come to a stop because of how bad things were, and I transferred myself back over here to Canada with my family. Coming here as an IMG it's more of a specific. My experience as a physician is a bit different than maybe someone who was graduated in Canada or did medical school here in Canada. It's much more, I think, straightforward for those who graduate here. For IMGs, for international medical graduates, it's a bit different. When you come to Canada or to the States, there's a lot of exams that you have to write that are involved, orals and writtens, and you need a lot of research and a lot of electives and observerships and stuff like that to actually get yourself back into the system. It took me, because I had not come prepared. I had not planned leaving actually Syria and coming here. I had to. So I wasn't prepared, so I had to do all that. It took me around 2.5 years or 3 years to get all that done. And I had to apply, and then even when that's done, applying to residency spots, it's almost, there's no guarantee that you'll get a residency spot. It's unlike if you're a Canadian graduate where you're always guaranteed at least something, but for international graduates, there's no guarantee that you'll ever get accepted ever. You could spend the rest of your life not getting back into medicine. The way medicine works is once you're done medical school, in order for you to practice, you have to have a residency. You have to do at least 2 to 7 years. So it's anything between those two numbers, depending on what specialty you're looking at, what you want to do with your life. So, but without that residency, it's almost impossible. And even if you were to do your residency overseas and come to Canada, you can't really work here in Canada unless you get certified by the Canadian Royal Colleges for different disciplines. So that usually means either you do a fellowship here or you repeat your residency all over again. That's unless you've graduated in places like England or the States, where there is some level of synchrony with how things work here. But if you're coming from the Middle East or from anywhere around the world, you have to repeat things. So I had to, it took me around 4 years of applying, and just a very difficult process to get accepted back into internal medicine again. Medicine residency is basically a 3-year program. At the end of the 3rd year, you write an internal medicine exam, so you're certified as an internist, which is a specialty. That's a full specialty. And then after that, you apply to a subspecialty if you want. So I applied to medical oncology, which is what I'm going to, which is what I was doing in Syria anyway. It only took me 10 years to get back into it, but it worked anyhow. So which is the studies of cancers and the treatment of cancers and stuff like that. And it's not the most fabulous thing, but I like it and I think it's important. And then you do 2 to 3 years of fellowship, and after that you write also the oncology subspecialty exam, and then you're certified to work, in Canada anywhere within that field. So for me, that's kind of how I got through things. I'm just finishing my 3rd year of internal medicine. I have my exam in March, and then I'll be starting oncology in July of 2021, inshallah.
Why did you choose to become a doctor?
It's funny. I think answering that question is difficult, especially now, because it's so long ago. I mean, it's been around 20 years that I kind of set out to do this. So it's hard for me to remember what started out. My first memories of it was my uncle. I had an uncle who studied medicine in Bulgaria. It was a big deal. He was the only doctor in the family, only doctor in the village, and people loved this man. They really did. He was just a superstar whenever he came back to visit, and he was just so people really benefited from him, even if he didn't have anything to offer, like in terms of treatment. He was just an ear to listen to their problems or just to be part of who they were, and help them through whatever struggles they had. And some of them I remember would say stuff like, his name was Hassan. So whenever Dr. Hassan comes in, I feel better. Whenever he shows up, I just feel better. I remember listening to that, like that's interesting. That's weird. Oh, not weird. Maybe, that was just exciting to me to think that you could have that level of an effect on a human being, to actually relieve their suffering, even if if you're not carrying with you that magic wand or that pill that's going to fix everything for him. And he died as a young person. He was like maybe 34 or 35 when he passed away. He got very ill. He died from cancer. And then, so kind of all these things kind of came together for me as I grew up. And my dad had another uncle, also a doctor, very well respected. I don't remember him well because he died when I was younger. And just kind of all that together made me interested in medicine. And I just kind of took it from there. And then I don't even remember how things worked out, but I kind of set out that's what I want to do. And I wanted to work with, in order to become a doctor, you have to really be a people's person. Like, unless you're going to do something like radiology or pathology where you're just staring into a microscope all day. You have to be a people's person where you enjoy listening to people and talking to people and communicating with them, because a lot of what medicine is communication, is empathy, it's education, explaining to people what they've got and how to deal with it, and then helping them through the struggle of having something wrong within their physiology or within their lives. So it's not just the information that counts, it's a lot of other stuff that makes a good doctor a good doctor.
Did you sacrifice anything for medical school, like your family, your time?
Oh my God, what didn't I? Oh my gosh. Medical school, the moment you get accepted to medical school or you decide medicine, that's, a lot of people don't understand when they make that decision what that entails. Like they don't understand, like they think, I'm going to medicine. You have no idea what that means. What that means is that your lifestyle from now till the day you die is going to be very, very different than how other people live their lives. The time and effort that is needed to actually get through medical school, and later on to get through a residency, and the time that you have to spend working, training, dealing is huge. It's a huge commitment. That's why I remember my mom telling me when I was in my 3rd year of medical school, I came back home one day, and they had decided that they were going to leave back to Canada. They were going to leave Syria and come back. I'm like, you're going to leave me? And she's like, what difference does it make? We never see you anyways. And she was right. Like it's many, many hours that you have to spend in faculty, in labs, and in the hospital just training. So it's a huge commitment. You have to really enjoy what you do. You have to really enjoy, not just with being a doctor comes a certain level of prestige that's undeniable. But if that's and you make a good living. But if that's the motivation, the motive, or the reason that you did it, you won't stay, because really what you have to enjoy is people, is helping relieve suffering of others, and actually finding self-fulfillment within doing that. But for me, I think the most important thing is to enjoy what you do. You have to really enjoy, not just with being a doctor comes a certain level of prestige that's undeniable. But if that's the and you make a good living. But if that's the motivation, the motive, or the reason that you did it, you're not you won't stay, because really what you have to enjoy is people, is helping relieve suffering of others, and actually finding I missed out on a lot of things that my peers were doing. I don't regret it, and I'm happy with it, alhamdulillah. But it is a very big time and effort sacrifice that you have to put in just the moment you decide medicine is what you want to do.
What does a day in your life look like?
Oh, well, I think you should ask maybe someone who's finished their training, because their answer will be very different than someone like me who hasn't finished their training fully, because our schedules are pretty busy. A regular day would be maybe, from a medical perspective, of course, we start around, it depends on what we're on. If I'm on clinic, maybe 8. If it's wards, maybe 7. You kind of begin the day. And you get into the hospital. Again, it depends on, because medicine, there's all these different disciplines in medicine. They're not similar in terms of what the end result and lifestyle is going to look like, and because whether you're seeing patients in a clinical setting, you're sitting a clinic setting, or seeing them on a ward, whether you're in the ICU where it's very high acuity, or you're in the emerge, for example, or you're doing something that's very low acuity, like diabetes and stuff like that, or if you're working on in a lab looking at microscopic histologies or pathologies, or you're looking, so it differs. For me as an internal medicine trainee, a lot of what we do is on the wards. So you have to get in the hospital pretty early, around 7, go to the computer, you kind of go through the list of the patients that you have that day, and you go through a lot of their blood work, make sure that there's nothing that definitely needs to be corrected really quickly. You're done, and you go start rounding on the patients. You start with the newer patients that just came in. You kind of make sure that you assess them properly. You make sure that they're not finding difficulty breathing, or that their vital signs are compromised where they need to be moved to a higher acuity part of the hospital, and that they're safe where they are. You make sure you understand what the problem is. You come up with a plan for them, and you put the plan in order, and you communicate with the nurses, and you kind of move and do that from one patient to the other. And depending on how many patients you have and how much staff you have helping you out, it takes from maybe 3 hours to 8 hours, depending on how that works. Now, if you're not on call, usually by 5 to 6 you're finished. You go home, and then you have to kind of go through a lot of the cases that you saw that day and make sure that you retained something and learned something, because it's being a doctor means that you will continue to learn and read articles and educate yourself until the day you die. Like, there's no stopping, because medicine is an evolving science. So it's never, okay, I know this now, I'm done. No, that will change. That piece of information 10 years from now will be different. It'll evolve as more treatments come available, as the nature of the disease changes, as the nature of people's experiences change. All of that will kind of change. You have to continue to do that when you go home. So really, it's a bit of a kind of a full day thing. So you only have a couple of hours where you can actually spend time with your family. If you're on call, instead of going home at 5 o'clock, you stay in hospital until 10 o'clock in the morning the next day. So that's kind of how it works. And that's for internal medicine. Ask surgical people, they stay actually until 5 p.m. the next day. So they stay a full day after that as well, which is even worse for them, because it's just the nature of what it needs to be in surgery. This is not to scare you off from medicine. It really isn't. I think medicine is a very fulfilling career. It's very rewarding on multiple levels, especially on a personal one. It's a very noble profession to be in. You just have to understand that you have to be up for the task. You're going to have to spend a lot of time. You have to be someone who's has a lot of grit and perseverance and consistency but if you do have that, then you'll be fine. But it's important that you understand it will be a rocky ride, and it's not going to be all rainbows and roses and unicorns. I guess one of the weirdest cases that I saw, it wasn't here, it was in Syria. This was just before I left. You have a big cancer hospital just on the outskirts of Damascus called the Bayruni Hospital, and I worked there for quite a bit. And there was this guy, his name was Ali, and he had this very undifferentiated cancer of the peritoneum, which is just the space between the actual intestines and the wall of the abdominal wall. So he just had a lot of spots there, and we couldn't find a primary source of his cancer. And he was ill, and he was stuck in this hospital. And every day I thought this guy was going to die. Every day I thought I would see him tonight, and then in the morning he would be gone. And every day he came back, and he was still making. He was just very, very ill, just bloated, and his kidneys weren't working, and nothing was working. And subhanAllah, for around a month, as I continued to think this guy was not going to make it, he actually managed to recover enough to want to go home. Like he still had cancer, probably was going to die at some point, but he recovered enough to go home. He had a couple of codes where his heart stopped, and we had to do CPR on him because he didn't want to die yet. He was very young. He was probably my age at the time, and we became buddies. He was from Aleppo, so around a month later, we had stabilized him to the point where, he was, and no one could believe that this guy's going to leave the hospital. And he gets into the car, and we say bye to him, and then he has an accident on the way and dies on the road on the road there. It was just and I got called by his wife telling me he didn't make it, and I thought, oh, subhanAllah, cancer finally took his life. And it's funny because he left here, he was fine. No, it wasn't a cancer. He had an accident and it passed away. So it's not the weirdest medical thing. It's just life, just how life works. You never know how things are going to turn out, and you can just only do your best for people and hope for the best, and then things kind of play out however things are going to play out. So I hope that's weird. I don't know what else could be. I don't know how to categorize a weird case, but.
Harder, being a doctor in a war or in a pandemic?
In a war. Nothing is like war.
Why?
There's nothing that you'll ever experience in your life that you can compare to war. War is it's just horrible. There's nothing good about it. There's not one aspect of war that is, especially modern day war, where it's not two armies that are meeting and fighting. It's just a civil war where where resources are being depleted and bombing is happening randomly, and people are just dying, and there's nothing, and there's no resources, and and the hospitals are closed, and the roads are closed, and it's just horrible because no one's safe, including medical personnel. Like medical personnel and staff should be safe, but they're not. And have doctors being killed on site or as they're doing their duty is just very devastating. And a pandemic is difficult because it's a very heavy burden on hospitals and people working in there, because the capacities can only put up with so many cases at a time. And pandemics is scary because of a lot of people coming all at once. We can't cope with all that, so it's difficult. But war is just complete chaos, and it's fear that if doctors shouldn't fear for their lives as they're trying to help others. If you understand what I'm saying, like in pandemics, you're fearing for everyone, but to a certain degree, you're safe if you have your mask on and you're doing the right thing. You're relatively safe and you're taking care of others. But in war, you're not. So I don't think anything compares with war. It's not a fair question to pandemics, because pandemics are very difficult, but you compare them to something that's uncomparable too.
And the last one's, what's your advice for someone considering a career as a doctor?
I think make sure that you figure out what type of doctor you want to be. Back in the day, you didn't have to. Doctors, it was just the doctor. Any village or city had the doctor who treated everything. That doesn't exist anymore. Medicine now, science today has mushroomed. Like it's every discipline has become huge. So there's no way for you to know everything like doctors used to. Like you go to one doctor, you had the answers for everything. It doesn't work like that anymore. You have to figure out what type of doctor you want to be. So go spend time with a family doctor, with an internist, with a surgeon, with a pathologist, with a radiologist, with a psychiatrist. There's nothing in common between a day of a surgeon and a day of a pathologist. There's nothing in common. Like they share nothing. Even though they work together, like the surgeon is taking out whatever it is, the tumor or the lymph node, and sending it to the pathologist to study. But in terms of their lifestyle and what they know, their knowledge base and their daily routines and what they see, there's nothing in common at all. So you need to go and see the different types of careers that exist. Figure out a career that works for you, that you feel would be fulfilling for you on a personal level in terms of the people you help, and then set out for that, and then you'll be good. Because if you set out for medicine in general, you'll be surprised of how different these different disciplines actually are in medicine. You may be disappointed if you don't. So you figure out what you want. Some people like radiology, they enjoy the concept of CT scans and MRIs, which is a full discipline in medicine. It's a 5-year residency. But again, a radiologist and internist don't really cross paths at all, besides, I order the scan and he reads it for me and gives it, and I take a look at what they said. So I would go and shadow physicians in different disciplines and find something you like. And once you do, then set out for that, inshallah. You should be good. And just prepare yourself for a lot of, it's a lot of time to be given and sacrifice and a lot of work and years, but it's definitely worth it. And even regardless of, your gender, your race, your background, your age, it's very doable. And you can still have a fulfilling life, and I have a very strong social life, and I do a lot. And it's just maybe not as much sleep as I would like, and maybe not as much leisure time, but still it's good enough. And I feel like I'm very fortunate to be in what I am in.
Thank you guys guys so much for watching.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
And comment down below if you think this job is a good fit for you.
And if it's not, comment down below which one you'd like us to do next time.
See you next time.
Bye!